you were a part of this huge desegregation movement, unbeknownst to you. And so you really were inundated within a system of white supremacy, and race was critical to your life. And yet, you knew nothing about it, right? And it just
Yeah,
goes, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I missed quite a lot of things that were going on around me. At Fisk, there was so much history there. There were people that literally were involved with the Freedom Riders and the Civil Rights Movement. That I knew them in other ways. There was a Reverend Kelly Miller Smith that was involved with the Freedom Movement. I knew him as a pastor that I met that was the father of a girl I was trying to date. And there was other people. Nikki Giovanni had just left there a few years ago. Diane Nash and some of the other people involved with the Freedom Riders were gone, but still there was after effects of what they had done all around me. But I missed it. There was murals by Aaron Douglas on the second floor of our administration building that I had no idea they were there until 20 years later when I went back after having read about them to see what I had not seen while I was there. So I was a fun-loving athlete, um, a little bit of a scholar, but I was not about finding my blackness. Blackness was just a thing. On the other hand, there were students all around me that were dead serious about what they were doing. I was the first of my generation first of my family to go to college. And so I didn't have that background. I didn't have a legacy. And there were students, that had, fathers and grandfathers that went to Fisk and other schools. There were people that came there dead set on what their purpose was. But I was, enjoying playing basketball and, doing fine in school, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just there looking to graduate and then get a job and go from there.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So when I think about my own kind of college experience, I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do either. I didn't have the athlete part like you had to kind of keep me preoccupied and within like a realm of competition and stuff like that. I did like intramural sports and like random other activities. But
Mhm.
yeah, um, I think probably I had a little bit more opportunity to learn about race just because I was a little more focused on my academics, just out of curiosity and to explore different subject matters. And I went to the University of Rochester where they allow that through their programming. Um, and then, of course, becoming a teacher and continuing education just kind of kept that ball rolling a little bit. Um, so it's interesting how these kinds of decisions can play into how your evolution of race consciousness develops. I think you had told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, during our Zoom call that we had before this live stream, that you really didn't get deeply into the research about racial stuff until pretty recently. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, within the last 10, 15 years. Although I'd say race became important when I got out into the workforce and started working for major corporations. I started working for Procter and Gamble when I got out of school, and then went to Southern Bell and then AT&T. And then I, found out pretty quickly, what it took to advance in those cultures and how big a role race played. And Procter and Gamble not so much because I was in a outside sales job and pretty much worked alone and only saw the rest of the corporation at corporate meetings and when I went to the headquarters. But at Southern Bell at AT&T, where I worked with a bunch of other people, and saw that one, that the history of race in those companies, that they were undergoing several lawsuits, class action suits, about what they had not done for Black people previously. And sometimes we benefited from that as the unions. There was a union environment there, the Communications Workers of America, and they were constantly fighting for improvements. And whenever the union won something, the managers, I was a manager in the sales force, they got benefits too. And I quickly realized that we were getting raises and to make up for raises that they hadn't given previously. So I quickly became aware of what had transpired in those companies. So it became something that I learned rather quickly. Um, and I think I'd always been a follower of politics and read about, I was in college during the Watergate investigations and hearings, and I started reading all the books associated with it, which didn't have a lot to do with race, but it got me into politics. And soon I started, becoming interested in politics and race, and that stayed with me for a long time. It's still with me now.
Wow. Okay. So this is interesting. The corporate side. I'm very curious about that. So you mentioned the class action lawsuits, the raises that you noticed to make up for, I'm assuming, what was past economic discrimination against Black people. So was there anything else that you noticed while you were in that environment? Because I feel like for some people, even that could have gone easily unnoticed, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure they didn't wave a sign being like, sorry, here's some more money. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. With Southern Bell was interesting in that it was a completely different environment, and it was you know before the it split apart from AT&T. Southern Bell was an atmosphere where there's a lot of nepotism and mostly white people doing their jobs, and black people were kept out of certain positions and not allowed any advancement. And at some point in time, as they started getting competition through uh, divestiture, a process which allowed other people to compete with the Bell companies, all of a sudden they had to get more professional. So instead of hiring salespeople, who came from Yellow Pages or former linemen or something else, they started hiring outside salespeople with professional sales experience. And it was that's the time that I came to the company and had a background in sales with Procter and Gamble, which was thought to produce a high quality sales force. And I was one of three black salespeople that talked to business customers in the cities of Orlando and Jacksonville. I was in Jacksonville at the time, but we were in the same district, so we saw everybody else. And but we also had a support group. We had a black group called what do they call it? NIMS. We called ourselves NIMS, which was ends in management. And but we would get together and have parties and socialize and talk about what was going on with experiences we had. So we had people to talk to about our experiences and to help us when we had situations that needed to be addressed. There was a time when I was, at my in my cubicle, and there was a manager, a white manager that managed some of the support people, and he had there was some situation he was discussing with somebody else, and he said there's a N in the woodpile somewhere, and I heard it, and I think whoever was with him said, hey, he's over there, and he didn't know whether I'd heard him or not. So we went on, and nothing came of it then, but I made sure that everybody knew what this guy, his name was Kent, what he was saying, and there were black people that worked for him, and they needed to know what that's an expression he was comfortable in using. But we worked together, the people inside the company, whether they were management or non-management or union members, supported each other when normally those people might be at odds with each other. There was a strike at one point in time where the union members went on strike, and the managers had to take over and basically do some of those jobs. And we weren't scabs because we were already within the company, but our working made it possible for the company to hold out until they reached an agreement. But it didn't break up the relationships we had with the other black people, in the company. In fact, it kind of made us stronger that we still had their back and didn't turn on them, when they were fighting for what they felt was important to them.
wow, so much there about just collaboration and community building and protection in a hostile environment. Wow, that's awesome. I feel like there's still a lot of that going on in corporate settings, groups getting together like that, like the one that you were in. I just wish there was more of it. You know, I wish it was beyond just protection, like I really sometimes long for this kind of network and power building, within some of these companies to like, maneuver and to get that
I
advancement.
want to add that there was another aspect of collaboration and groups, and is that by going to an HBCU and being a member of a fraternity, that when I got out, the graduate chapter that I joined, they had connections that I moved from Nashville to Jacksonville, and instantly had people that I knew and I got to know, and were willing to help me in adjusting to the community and doing things. And if I meet somebody even now from an HBCU, we have that commonality that allows us to know we have something in common and have some common ground which we can build on.
Very nice.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.